In the wake of the killing of UnitedHealthcare CEO Brian Thompson, many people are discussing the need for universal healthcare in the United States. What about patients? What about those who die every single day from a lack of care? Some of the issues that this murder brought up for everybody. But except some people. In fact, the people in power are not so worried about healthcare patients. They're more concerned with CEOs. In fact, many in the elite are saying this is open season on CEOs, even though there have literally been no other plots discovered. Governor Kathy Hochul is one of those elites. She is considering creating a special hotline for CEOs to call should they feel threats to their safety. Hochul understood how serious the impact of both the killing and the hateful reaction to it is, and she wants to make sure that state resources, specifically the domestic terrorism resources, are focused on being supportive, sharing information, and that is Wild, who is a reporter on this, who said of her initial conversation with Hochul, I believe. And in fact, that means that, the governor, the state of New York, the city, they will be sharing information with intelligence sources. They're gonna be sharing information with like Homeland Security. Not only that, they're gonna be looping in corporate security, right? So it's sort of a triad of surveillance on everyday people, which is just wild to me, Sharon. Like, it's incredible that like, and it kind of proves the point that like vigilante justice is not really justice, because the reaction to it is simply going to be a tripling down on, hey, thank you for bringing our attention to the plight of CEOs. We must protect them with even more security and more surveillance on our people. We must make sure that like they are, all of the money that people pay to these insurance companies are simply going to their, again, private security details. I mean, listen, setting up a hotline.
Yeah.
Like, if you were if you're like a mega millionaire or billionaire, like, are you really gonna call a CEO hotline to say, I'm afraid? No, man, you call the cops or your own private security.
Yeah, there's someone at the gate anyway who has to be buzzed in before we can even get to that part. The cops would probably have to be buzzed in. How stupid do they think we are? I once was working in a newsroom in Cleveland, and there were terrible wildfires out west in California, and I believe it was Malibu. And the properties that were burning were upwards of $10 million or more. And we hate for people to lose their homes. The idiot news director who I worked for at the time actually said, we in Cleveland, which poverty was everywhere, all around us, need to raise funds from our viewers to send to these people who lost their homes in Malibu.
Wow.
Again, the daftness.
Yeah.
Again, no one said we want your homes to burn down. No one said that you're not entitled to your money. Hard earned or inherited, who cares? But this is what we're dealing with now, okay? Yeah. There's no such thing as reverse discrimination. I'm here to tell you that. And there's no such thing as CEOs of healthcare companies needing a hotline or a group therapy session. Really?
Yep.
Stop
Yeah. I mean, that's another thing that's being discussed. And also it's like, it's taxpayer money, right? It's New Yorkers' taxpayer money. And I think that it is, look, it is dangerous when someone is shooting in the middle of Manhattan and a busy street. But like, cops also do that regularly. Like, cops do that and endanger far more public members of the public than, let's just be real, than what Luigi Mangione did. This was not a mass shooting. This was a targeted shooting. And of course, we're so much more focused on this one targeted shooting than we are on the many school shootings, one that just happened in Wisconsin, that happen every single day that are killing nameless, children and teachers. Well, that's boring. They're not billionaires. They don't lobby their, government officials. Nah, boring, too boring. So it is important, like, who's getting counseling, right? Who's being reached out to at this moment? Who actually needs a hotline? A second grader called in what was happening at her school or their school in Wisconsin, a second grader. So I think we're sort of misplaced on where all the funds are going here. Who needs the actual support? CEOs will be fine. What's interesting, however, and this speaks to sort of, obviously the charges that are coming at Luigi Mangione, 1 count of first degree, 2 counts of second degree murder on top of the terrorism charges, those will be litigated in New York. and they will be litigated by a jury of and decided by a jury of Luigi Mangione's peers. And that might be an interesting task for the prosecution, given that there is a fair amount of sympathy for what Luigi Mangione did. Whether or not people, agree with violence, there is a sort of understood justification for it. And that's kind of undeniable. Emerson College actually found that 41% of young voters agree that Thompson's death is justified. Question was, do you think the actions of the killer of the UnitedHealthcare CEO are acceptable or unacceptable? So a little bit different. Acceptable is a different word than justified. Acceptable is, it's like, I'm okay with that. I don't feel any strong weight. Now again, that's not the majority. It was 41%. But still, Sharon, I'm reminded of look, I do think that, look, if we're putting CEOs in the category of police officers, we know the police officers rarely get convicted by a jury. Because again, the people we lionize are people in positions of authority. Billionaires are right along with that, right? Even though they've done nothing to earn it, and they surely don't put themselves in harm's way as much as police officers do. And I'm not sure. I think it's interesting to see the amount of support Luigi Mangione is getting, and will that continue? I'm sure if the defense, which is, getting ready for all of this, will probably enter into evidence, and we'll see what judge presides over it, a fair amount of data around the private health insurance industry, and especially UnitedHealthcare. Maybe they'll go the route of sort of, Luigi Mangione's own ailments, his own chronic back pain, and so on.
Yeah. And I think there's even another layer. You didn't raise it specifically, but I think you might agree with me. I, right before we came on, was listening. I mean, it's all I do is I sit around and throw things at the television. Respected law pundit was stating that, listen, he'll probably go with an insanity defense. This is a troubled man. This is a tragedy all the way around for the victim and the accused. And I'm not even going to touch that part. But I wonder what the outrage would be and the conversation would be had it, instead of Luigi, been Jerome in downtown Detroit who opened fire in cold blood. Would there be this rush to say, well, look, he's got some kind of mental health issue, and he may, this is not really about him, it's about us and our reaction to certain people who do wild things in public. But I'm okay with the larger conversation here. Just the thought I had.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see whether he goes for insanity, given that it seemed so clear. I mean, let's just be real, clear that he knew what he was doing.
Yeah. And look what he shouted.
The things that he shouted, the things that he wrote, him being in public in a McDonald's, almost wanting to be caught. The statement is something he wants to make. And so I imagine the prosecution is trying to make the least martyr of him as possible. And there would be better opportunities for, he could possibly avoid life. I don't know. I don't know enough, but we obviously will be following the case very closely.
When you click the join button and become a tier 2 member, you get access to all of our weekly top 10 lists. What are you waiting for?